Ready? Call to order the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission meeting of, I guess it was March 10th that was moved to March 13th that was moved to March 16th because of the weather. This meeting is being both audio and video recorded. Are there any comments on the agenda? Hearing none, it is adopted. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes of February 13th? Is there a motion to approve?
Make that motion.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. There is a warrant of March 7th to ratify. Is there a motion to ratify the warrant of March
I'll
7th?
make that motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. Pending leases and contracts.
Just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. There's an updated version, should be a handout. It says updated in red. The first is a lease to Nantucket Regal Group LLC doing business as Crosswinds Restaurant, and that is for the restaurant concession, $156,520 annually. It's a 5-year lease with one 5-year option, plus the annual business fee and percentages gross of over $3 million. So we met with them yesterday. They signed their lease. They're anticipating opening by May 1st and possibly sooner. So we're going to work with them as much as we can to get that back in operation.
But we'll start charging them rent May 1st, correct?
Yes, the rent will be effective May 1st. They'll be in transition during the April timeframe.
Mrs. Flamser, excuse me for interrupting you.
But we didn't have that one in our packet.
Yeah. The lease
Yes,
should
we
be.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, from
No,
the
it
old
wasn't in the
packet,
package. It
yes.
should be handout because they just signed it.
Well, maybe we didn't have the we didn't have the agreement.
The draft is in there,
Right.
not the executed one.
Really? I did not, I
The
went through the
only-
whole thing.
Oh,
Did not have it. I don't think I
That's
did
okay.
either.
If you want to take a peek at the one to be signed, you have 2 copies here.
Okay.
Why don't we take a moment and look at that?
and the only change was that the rent would be effective May 1st. We made one modification that they had asked for in their proposal, and that was changing the number of months that the gift shop portion would be open. Other than that, they took no other exceptions to the lease.
Tony, do you want to see
Tony
this?
was involved in, I believe.
You guys want to pass this around? This is our copies that are.
To be
approved to be signed.
Yeah.
Do you want it?
Actually, I was involved in that. I
It
think.
was
Thank you.
That's fine.
It was a very straightforward, very well-organized proposal, good proposal. They will be utilizing the gift shop space for grab-and-go, cold-type sandwiches, and possibly selling some local product as well, too. So, very well-done proposal, and look forward to working with them.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Rafter, we were talking about the contract. When did you say they were, how long they were going to have, having the gift shop space opened? How many months?
It will be operational, I believe, 4 months of the year,
June through September.
June through September.
June to September. Thank you.
The second on the list is a catering license, Taste of Nantucket. It's their annual license, $1,500 for FBO catering. Then we have a beach license with Go Figure Bar Studio. It's their annual $1,500 business fee. Another license agreement with New England Aircraft Detailing for $1,500. We are recommending that we charge only the annual business fee there, and we're removing the percentage of gross for third-party operators. As we get into the meeting, you'll see our draft rates and charges. It was becoming a bit of a disincentive for third-party providers to come to the island and provide services to aircraft, and we weren't making any real money on it, but we need the service of detailing and specifically even mechanics for aircraft. So that license agreement is without the participation clause. Then we have a contract replacement with MHQ for $30,098. That is for a pickup truck. We had a contract, but it expired and we have to redo the contract. It's a state contract. And we're hoping to get MassDOT ASMP grant funding at 80% for that. We put in 4 applications for ASMP. I'll get into those in detail later, but we are fairly certain that we should be able to receive that money. And the last is a contract change order to Jacobs for $4,611, change order to their task number 1, and that's adding the study of the perimeter fence to move the UPS, expand the existing UPS property out towards the aeronautical side.
I'd make a motion to approve the leases and licenses and contracts as shown on Exhibit 1.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried unanimously. Is there public comment at this time? Hearing none. Pending matters. Mr. Rafter?
On the general fund repayment, I have not heard any movement on the towns. They were going to make an appeal to the FAA to attempt to get the additional funds that FAA had denied. I have not heard any change on that. Brookfield assets, we're still working on resolving that. And on the crew quarters development, the only change there is that on annual town meeting, there is a warrant article to change the zoning to make it what would be necessary for us to develop the second half of that parcel on Nobody Farm Road to, I believe, commercial CN, commercial neighborhood.
Any questions? T-hangers?
The T-hanger analysis, I have a draft done. I circulated it internally due to some scheduling conflicts. Staff will not be able to meet until later next month. We also, our FBO staff performed a survey on how other airports handle their T-hangers, what they charge, who does maintenance, and so on. And we're going to be reviewing that. I don't think I will have it for the next meeting because our internal meeting is going to be after it. So for May, I should have a recommendation, and in between time, most likely request a subcommittee meeting to review where what our recommendations are going to be for the operation of T-hangers.
Any questions? The grant assurances, rights and obligations is here as a placeholder, right?
Yes. There is one warrant article that had a potential conflict with our grant assurances, but I believe it received a negative motion from FinCom.
If I may, on
Yes.
that, was it a negative or was it to refer to committee for further, to the
I had heard
town
it was.
government?
I had heard it was negative.
Oh, okay.
I'd have to verify that, Arthur, but my understanding was it was negative. The town council's recommendation, I believe, was if they wanted to proceed with it, that it would have to go through the process of amending bylaws and so on, but then that would also, there would be an exception because of the airport and the grant assurances. I will verify that.
Yeah, the last I saw it was, it didn't quite go that far, and that it was going to be to refer it to the town government study committee, and it might have then continue to,
Well, if they do that, it'll be,
it'll be dead right now, but it might
Yeah,
still,
right.
that's the only reason I'm bringing it up, just to, if it is truly negative, that would be positive.
okay. Anything else on that? Review and discussion of airport debt service.
So in your packet, you have our debt schedule, and you can see where some of our debt starts to roll off. And we also have some very long-term debt, such as the terminal improvements and terminal expansion. Jamie is working very hard to get our debt service under control, and you'll see in the next piece here, transfers, how we're doing some of that. But you can see where the gray areas are, and that's where essentially those payments roll off. And we have a couple in 19, we have a couple more in 20, and then some in 21 that continue out, and then next don't come out off until about 2024. So our objective is to keep reducing that, but then look at how we are funding our capital projects such that we don't have to take long-term, smaller capital programs. And if you look at the next part, which is the transfers, on the next page, on the top right, you have the list of transfers that you will see in an article at the annual town meeting. The first is for the stabilization fund for the salaries. The second is from the fuel revolving into capital projects, and that's for the seasonal hold room. The next group are a number of capital items that, again, what we're attempting to do there, you can see they're relatively small amounts, and we're using our other fund balances to pay those off and pay for them rather than taking out debt, so that we don't have a continuing debt, we're just paying these off. With those, if you look to the left now, you can see the footnotes, the red letters explain each one of, where the funding is coming from. So for the first one, in the retained earnings, the $429,000, that's the 429 that's associated with the, I missed it, I'm sorry. The 540,000 is the 540, it's all the small capital projects. The 420 was budgeted previously. So we started with $1.9 million, we removed those, and we're down to about $938,000 estimated, and these are all estimated balances in retained earnings. On the stability fund, we started off with $200,000, and we're going to bring some money into that to bring it up to $400,000. We have projection of potential retirements in the future as well. On the airport PFC.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is a nit, I know I'm being difficult, but is this are we calling it the stability fund or the stabilization fund?
It does say stabilization. Yeah, so I just.
Well, it says airport stability. It should be airport stabilization.
Yeah, okay, thank you, it's the same thing.
And then we have the PFC fund balance beginning at $1.2 million. We anticipate an additional 425, but then we're also dispersing 400,000, so the estimated end balance there would be about $1.2 million. And then on the fuel revolver, we're starting with about $1.9 million, removing a number of different things for the purchases, the transfers, and so on, to leave a balance of about $1.9 million. So, or I'm sorry, about $1 million, almost 1.1. And so in that, you have the 1.1 and the PFC, another 1.2, about 400,000 in stabilization, and 930-some thousand in retained earnings.
What are the disbursements, I'm sorry, in the PFC fund balance? What are,
The 400,000?
yes,
I'm sorry.
It's just reimbursing ourselves each year, a fixed amount.
okay, all right.
To make the budget balance.
Okay, I just wanted to know how it was. Thank you.
I had one question.
Yes.
On the Article 13 transfer from the stabilization fund to salaries for the 100,000, is that solely based on the funds required due to retirements?
It's a combination of things, I believe. That one, I'm sorry, wait a minute.
Is that
For the airport stabilization, it's retirement associated. We have actual retirements, and then we have projected. So we're drawing down some, but we're putting back in more to build the balance up a little bit higher because we have more anticipated.
We have people retiring this year,
that we
fiscal
know
year.
of, and then we have potentially others.
Right,
So we're working to build that balance up a little bit.
but the 100,000 is specifically to deal with people who are retiring this year.
The
That was
knowns,
my question.
yes,
Yes.
the known entities, yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any other questions? Actually, on the fuel revolver, the fuel sales should be higher, should they not, if the fuel purchases are higher?
No, it's a cap, the 4 million
Oh,
cap. The rest
Right,
rolls over
that's
into our
right.
operating.
Okay, gotcha. All right, gotcha. Thank you. I'll get it 1 year.
Yeah, they have to be the same, and once you cap out on one side or the other.
Yep, gotcha. Thank you. All right, any other questions on that? Rates and charges.
So in your packet, you have a draft of what staff and I are recommending for changes for this season. You have two different formats, same information, but in two different formats. And there was just a thought that it might be cleaner for the second format. We are, on the longer term for next season, going to be redoing, we have a consultant coming in to redo our entire rates and charges, establish methodologies, develop a model, and recommend a standardized format that is industry standard. So this is, again, just another one-year period, if you will. Throughout the document, you will see a number that are TBD or to be determined fees. We put those in as essentially placeholders because we want the users to understand that that is something we will be looking at as part of our overall rates and charges analysis, not necessarily for implementation this season, excuse me, but going forward, they are the types of things that we're going to be looking at, and we wanted to make sure we were transparent with them and just let them know that. There's a handout that, did we change this, the tie downs? Okay, so
In the handout.
it's in the handout. We're keeping the tie downs as is. We had some discussion about changing those, but we're recommending for a number of reasons to keep that. I would like to ask the commission, the process that we're looking at here is, this is a draft for your review. We would like to have your comments back by the 23rd to allow us the 2 weeks that are required for posting for the public hearing, which would take place at the next meeting. So if you have any comments, inputs, questions, please get them to us at the latest by the 23rd. And then we will hold the public hearing at the April 10th meeting. Again, a lot of this was cleanup, and one of the big initiatives was addressing the Part 135 on-demand scheduled service issue where we received that Part 13 complaint. We did prevail on that, but we did acknowledge that we needed to do some work, and we established a structure here that we think addresses that. We met with the user that would be most significantly impacted, and that was Tradewinds, and they understood and agreed to it. So that's why we're recommending the changes here. And you will see a number of different fees, as I mentioned, that, some may ultimately be wrapped up in other charges and may be included in them. There may be a reason why some of them are broken out, depending upon what cost centers are established, but so I'll be glad to take any questions if you have them now, but certainly we need your input by the 23rd at the latest for those.
Was there any discussion with the Tailwinds? Wasn't that the one that filed the? Part
Tailwinds
13?
filed the Part 13, but they were, if you will, operating under very similar circumstances to a number of other operators. Tradewinds was complying with it. Tailwinds was objecting, and others were. So
Right.
this is to address some of that, to make it more consistent with the terminology and things that it should be. I have to double check with Noah, the interaction he had with Tailwinds on this, but it's basically converting it to just a straightforward per use fee. Excuse me.
So that would address their concerns, I would guess.
It should address, I don't know it's going to fully address them, but it certainly will make it more understandable, and, they didn't
Right.
want to pay anything for some of their stuff, so.
Right.
This is a matter of curiosity. This bag belt makeup fee, which you and I talked about before, is intended to take the place of money that we thought we were getting from TSA.
That may, I don't know that it's fully intended to do that, Dan. The more I thought about it, that money is for the capital outlay that was put out when the belt was installed. This is more for the ongoing maintenance and upkeep. the belt is probably.
How are we, all right, my question was, how are we going to determine it? Or is it going to be, we're not going to have somebody there counting the bags
No,
as
no,
they
no.
go on from.
There's actually other airports that have methodologies in place, and there's two different types, and off the top of my head, I forget what they are, but NOAA has done a lot of the homework. You can actually get bag counts, I believe, from TSA, or you can just simply do a prorated basis based on number of in-plane passengers.
But this is not intended to pay for an improvement to the belt.
It's for the cost of the operation and maintenance of the belt.
Can we do something like that? Can we get,
Again, when we do the formal rates and charges, depending upon what level we can take our cost centers and identify our exact costs for certain areas,
but I mean, if we're extending the belt because of the,
which is on hold, but
which is
yeah,
on hold, but if we were to do that,
we could put a surcharge in.
we could put a surcharge in.
Yep.
I mean, maybe if we put the surcharge in, we could take it off hold.
Right, so we didn't have one, we haven't had one to start with, or they were in individual leases.
It's not in theory, it should be included in the overall rate that they pay for their square footage. But it has not been identified, just like the ticket counter space. When we got down into the issue of reallocating ticket counters, it was very challenging because nobody necessarily paid specifically for a ticket counter or one or two or three. You paid one price and you got what you used. So it's, part of this analysis is going to be carving out those pieces and identifying specifically the measurable items that are being used and the costs associated with it.
Any other comments, questions? Yes, Mr. Gasparo.
I think in the new format under vehicle parking, it's probably just typo or Scribner's, but you have the front and the back exactly the same. I'm assuming it's just probably part of the initial construction of this document.
Yeah, because they are different.
Right. So I just wanted to bring that to your
Thank you, we'll
attention.
look at that.
And then the one thing that's still, I think I've raised this in the past, and I don't think that I'm glad that we have a study coming, but it seems to me that the annual parking at $1,500 for a car, and then on the tie down, you get a car and a plane for $1,500.
We had internal discussion about that. We actually had the initial draft had an increase, and NOAA came back and listed a number of reasons why at this point in time we should not do that. And I would, in reading his comments, I think they were very well researched and with a lot of good logic with regard to the user group that involves.
And they buy fuel and other things, which somebody who parks in the parking lot doesn't do.
It's a higher number individual with membership in a very strong national organization, and we don't necessarily have established methodologies for that. I think the risk of a challenge is greater than the benefit at this time. I'm not disagreeing that they should be, but we have to have some logic behind it without just simply saying we want to do X, Y, or Z.
Put that as one of your comments.
Raising it.
And that's fine. Again, you're going to be solicited for comments from the consultant, I'm sure, too, but that's certainly one that we want to look at.
The only other thing that concerns me is this amount in lieu of taxes. It really, it's to cover certain services that the town provides. Each tenant, landfill primarily, are there other services?
Not at this time, but typically a pilot is whatever they assess. So pilot is a payment in lieu of taxes.
Right. But how do they determine that? I mean, I think there should, my only point is there should be something on here, I think, that, because otherwise, somebody could come in and say, if I start a rental car operation, am I going to pay real estate taxes on the on the space I use, full real estate taxes?
No, that's not my understanding. And again, technically, right now, my understanding is it's just for the landfill. I think that would be difficult, Dan, for them to do that because it'd be like a double dipping type of thing. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, it wouldn't be double dipping because we don't pay taxes on the property.
Yeah. They would ride on our coattails.
Right. I'm just wondering if there shouldn't be some explanation as part of this as what's involved. I don't know how others feel, but,
We can check with our consultant on that too to see if there's something we can put in for this iteration.
okay,
And one other comment,
yes.
which I know that this is, you started off saying that some of the ones that you listed as to be determined is to look at, but when it comes to the GPUs, just to consider it, I think that we want to encourage the use of the GPUs as part of the noise abatement strategy. And so that might get factored into that.
And I agree. Again, one of the things I would like to see is if we reformat this, that it's at least acknowledged to the users or presented to the user, communicated to the users that the GPU fee is wrapped into whatever, a ramp fee or this or that, and for just those reasons.
All right, thank you. Next is the union agreement. Which is as advertised.
Yes, asking for ratification of the union agreement. And boy, it's been so long, I apologize, but the percentage increases
At
are.
least we got a clean copy to do this time.
Was it 2.5, and 2.5? Okay. So it was a total of 7 over 3 years, 2%, 2.5%, 2.5%.
Right.
And I have to say that Jamie and Debbie have done a tremendous job of cleaning this document up and putting it into more explanatory or self-explanatory or self-understanding language, and eliminated a lot of confusion in terms of, some of the language that was in there. So they deserve a lot of credit for really putting some work into this.
Any comments, questions? Is there a motion to approve the agreement?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried unanimously. Good job. Now we have to review executive session minutes to see if we have more we can release. Manager's report.
Okay, on the project side of the house, the vault replacement, the resolution to the issue has been broken down into 3 parts. It is the actual vault work, the generator, and the fencing. The vault work is moving forward. We paid National Grid, and they have about they said 5-week, 6-week lead time. That work is due to be completed by the end of May, along with the associated fencing work, of which we're applying for a MassDOT ASMP grant to complete that. The generator portion of it, which we can operate without the generator for now, has a very long lead time of about, I believe it was 20 weeks. So that won't be in until the fall. But they're moving along with that, and once we receive bids, we will put in for the FAA grant application for the generator piece. The FIDS PA project, there's a lot of significant movement on that. The contractor has taken the initiative to come in and said he's going to get this job done and he'll deal with the financial issue later. They started last Monday with Ryder Electric, a local contractor, who has had a number of people working all week, and their anticipation is to be out of here before the end of the month to have the new PA system up and operational. we're continuing to work, or Jacobs is continuing to work with the FAA to see if what portion of that they're willing to fund through a change order. And so we'll continue to work through the financial issues, but the good news is that the work is being done. The ramp area, as I mentioned before, the contractor will be back in the spring to finish that project and do the seal coating. The geometry issue, we have a deliverable due in May. The restaurant vestibule, we received notice yesterday that the building permit has been approved, so we'll be issuing notice to proceed next week. On the additional capacity program,
Excuse me, how long that project, the vestibule
The
project,
vestibule?
how long is it supposed to take?
45 days.
and they can operate while he's doing the construction as well, because they have two other means of egress and exit.
But it should be done.
I
Yeah,
think it'll be done well within
weather permitting.
the
The expanded hold room, we received one bid and had to be rejected because it was insufficient in terms of required forms. We are reissuing the bid, but because of the amount that was put in the bid as opposed to the estimate, it's most likely going to require a DCAM certified general contractor, and therefore they're also going to put in the second bid package, which is the foundation and footings, into that, and they're moving along, getting that bid out and getting them back in as soon as possible, but it may result in us having to do some work into the June time period out on the ramp. So it's, and I'm going to look at Mr. Sylvia and tell him his job is going to get a little more critical, because he's going to be our boots on the ground, the day-to-day operation of that. So it's going to be a little bit of pain, but I think it's going to be a lot of gain. So the parking for, we were looking for a fifth position, aircraft parking position on the apron. Jacobs has done various alternatives and not only identified a fifth, but a potential sixth parking position. And we're going to work with them to come out and actually work with our maintenance crew to identify the markings that are required. And we also have to obtain FAA approval for that. The podiums in the hold room, maintenance has constructed those. You can't tell the difference between the existing and the new ones that our folks built, other than the fact that they saved us a lot of money. They put a double wide together for JetBlue, and they've created a new one for Delta. Noah and Johnny and the crew have been doing it, and Skylar, our consultant, have been running a number of data cables into the new podiums as well as into the ticket counters that all had to be relocated. So there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work going on in terms of getting ready for this summer. The back wall signs are all complete. If you've been in the terminal, you'll see that they've been moved, and some are in different locations, a little different looking. And as I mentioned earlier, we received some word from MassDOT that they had a couple dollars in their ASMP program, so we put in applications for the security vehicle that we discussed earlier, a portion of the hold room, the fencing for the vault work, and the completion of our rates and charges analysis. On the RFP and bid side of the house,
That's not a done deal, but it's a pretty sure thing, right?
pretty sure thing, yeah. They tell us, here's about how much we have and what we're thinking. We tell them, here's what we'd like, and they say, well, put the application in for this. So the estimate is in the neighborhood of about $314,000, I think, which is essentially found money, which is a good thing. On the RFP and bid side, the Bunker Road, we have out Bunker Road RFP for the third time, and the proposals are due in March 30th. Hangar 5 RFP, we're working with legal to finalize that. The flat roof, old FBO request for expression of interest, we discussed with the PCO today, the chief, or CPO, Chief Procurement Officer Brian Turbot, and he has authorized us to put it out and see if we have any interest. We know of one party that's been looking forward to it, so we're hoping to see if there's any interest in that old
Hope he
building.
has a match.
Yeah. And airport gas, we had a call Monday with legal to address the requests that were made on the airport gas side. A response was sent to them, and we're looking to have a meeting next week to continue our negotiations. We also have a bid that'll be going out for paint removal and pavement markings. The bids are due in April 5th, and the work must be completed by May 5th. So that's a quick project, but it's going to be required as part of our certification as well. And we worked with our consultant on a joint type bid process with Martha's Vineyard and Provincetown, I believe Hyannis too, for markings and painting. So we hopefully will all get the economies of scale by putting it out together. On the operations side, maintenance has done, again, a great job in terms of being very creative. In the Holdrum project, we were told the estimate for each passenger gate was going to cost about $25,000. Our maintenance crew, with about $5,000 to $6,000 of materials and equipment, are constructing 4 gates. So they're doing a great job there. We had a pipe break in the decon room at the fire station, destroyed a number of cabinets, and our maintenance staff replaced those cabinets and a much better quality and did a perfect craftsman job. It was excellent. We're also working to have some staff trained in conjunction with Mass State Police on drone operations. Airports are starting to use drones for a number of different uses, including self-inspection, security, and things like that. Mass State Police are working with some folks at actually having people be able to get certified, and then we would be working with air traffic on how we would integrate that into the system. The airline lease agreements, the commission had asked us to have legal look at the airline lease agreements. We sent them our draft. They came back, and as you know, our existing lease agreement is about 9 pages. They came back with a somewhat standardized airline lease agreement, but it's 47 pages long.
Thank you for that.
Well, for that reason, we're not anticipating using that for this season. We need to get our leases done. You may recall we had one airline delay it for about 2 years, even though they had the same agreement year after year. So we're working with legal on the paring down of that, but making sure it covers everything. And what that may mean is we may excise some things from the standard airline lease and put them into rules and regulations. So there's 4 documents that we're going to be looking at, and we have to ensure that they're in sync, and that is the airline lease, the rates and charges, the rules and regulations, and the minimum standards. So it's going to be a little bit longer term process, but I just wanted to let the commission know that we're going to be moving forward with the existing leases for this season for the seasonal carriers, and by next year we should have a more standardized lease format in place. And I just want to give extend a shout out and a credit to our operations, maintenance, and security staff at the airport. They all did a tremendous job in the snowstorm. For those of you who are not aware, we had a number of challenges, just as everybody else, power outages, but we also had a number of generator failures. We had equipment failures, we had gate failures, and they did a tremendous job in opening the airport, getting everything clean, parking lots, runways, everything. I've been in airports a long time, and I have to tell you, it's amazing to see every single ramp, from T-hangars to cargo to you name it, all the taxiways, everything clean. Typically, you get one runway and maybe a couple taxiways and a little ramp area, but they all did a tremendous job, and I have to give them credit.
How did the new machine work?
The new machine worked very well. It was placed into service because the other machine went out of service, and it did a very good job. As much as our maintenance superintendent does not want to acknowledge that, it actually worked very well. So, any questions before I move on to statistics?
No, but on that same subject, believe you sent me an email and maybe everybody else about the
Yes.
FAA.
The tower chief was extremely happy with, and sent a very nice email thanking the crews for all their work and acknowledging that they did a tremendous job as well. So, okay, on the statistics. The operations are down again, 22 point almost 3 for the month, 11.7 for the year-to-date. The GA operations were up 2% over, and this was for February, or 18 operations, so it's nominal. The emplanements were up a decent percentage, 28% over last January, down 2.8, but what we're starting to see is it's coming back up. It leveled off, we stopped declining, and now we're climbing back up a little bit. Cape Air saw a 12% increase in the Nantucket Air, and I'm sorry, while Nantucket Air had a 9% increase and trade winds was down 25%, and Retrix had an increase of 28% over last January. I'd like to mention, before I go any further too, I forgot to mention this, I met face-to-face with Rick Arugio, the operator of Island Air, who did receive a certificate. We're looking to have another meeting next week, and they're anticipating getting started by before Daffodil Weekend, so that will also help turn the employments.
Is it Island Air or Island Shuttle?
Island Shuttle, I'm sorry, did I say Island? Island Shuttle. Cape Air saw a decrease in employments, 10% in the Boston market, and New Bedford was up a whopping 92%, 123 passengers. Did you?
I put up the summer, not January.
Okay. The Hyannis market saw a total increase of 28%, or 20%, or 638 passengers, with Cape Air increasing from 14 to 108 passengers, Nantucket Air increasing by 9%, and Retrix carrying 844 passengers for a 125% increase. So Hyannis is starting to come back a little bit too over last year, and
Yeah, but that was also the month the harbor
boats-
was frozen.
The boats had some challenges, but, and again, I think as we get Island Shuttle though back in here, you might start seeing this, so. The Vineyard traffic was up 80% or 45 passengers. On the fuel side of the house, Jet A gallons for January were up 62.7% and up 6.6 for the year. February, they're up 18.8%. Again, percentages this time of year are a little deceiving, but still they're going strong. Avgas was down 5.8 in January and year-to-date down 17.8, but February they were up 6.8%. Freight was down 29.29 over last January, still up year-to-date 6.86, with, I believe it was UPS had a very strong percentage increase while the others saw a decrease.
But this was the Postal Service freight.
Postal Services,
Were they not running for some reason?
I don't know if there may have been a couple of days they missed, but I think, again, some of this may be termed the Amazon effect because UPS is doing a lot of Amazon work. And the noise, we had no complaints, just as we did last year. On the personnel side of the house,
Any
we,
questions on the statistics?
I'm sorry.
Statistics? Sorry, go ahead.
on the personnel, we're continuing to interview candidates for the position to replace Mr. Tallman when he retires. We have recategorized the position to a airport security coordinator, terminal facility manager, because it does involve a lot of operation of the facility. And we're also interviewing for the replacement of a maintenance position where we had an individual resign. And that's my report.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I have one question. Was security not in the first proposal for Mr. Tallman's job?
I'm sorry?
Did you say at one point that security was not?
No, it was, but that was a primary focus, and it still is.
Okay,
But we've added the facilities management part to it as well.
okay, all right. I thought you had said at one point that it was not in the original job.
No, that was the
Okay.
primary focus before, but we've
Okay,
added some
thank
additional.
you, sorry.
Are there any commissioners' comments at this time?
Well, I did stop by to see all the new work that was in the main part of the airport. And a very nice young man, I don't know who's through, Retrix or the other, but Mr. Kadeem McCarthy was very helpful in showing me and explaining what he knew about it. So I was just passing that along, that I told him I wanted to find out what was happening, so he showed me.
Thank you.
One comment, I'm wondering if it may be a good idea to let the editor know that the lease has been signed for the airport.
I apologize, I should have mentioned this. The INM was over today and took a picture of the restaurant. And the editor, we have been keeping her abreast of what's taking place. So we made sure that they knew today that the lease was signed and we didn't think that there were going to be any objections this evening.
Thanks.
Anything else? Public comment? Hearing none. I will entertain a motion to go into executive session under General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, to review executive session minutes as enumerated. And under Clause 6, to consider the lease value of various leases, the chair has determined that an open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiation position of the Airport Commission. And under Clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to pending litigation in respect to Airport Improvement Plan AIP projects.
So moved not to return to open session?
Thank you.
Second.
How do you vote, Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Aye.
Topham? Ms. Plancy?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo? The chair votes aye.
Thank you.